Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Speaker Stories. Today, I'm joined by Tim MacIntyre, MacIntyre Geologic Consulting. Tim has agreed to be our August speaker. This is our first luncheon lecture series since our summer break, so we're looking forward to it. It's coming up Tuesday, August 25th, downtown at the Wynkoop Brewery. You can join us in person. You can join online, but you got to register, so make sure you do that quickly. The title of Tim's talk is Sand, Salt, and Copper, an Introduction to Sediment-Hosted Copper Deposits, Paradox Basin Evaporites, and the Cashin Copper and Silver Deposit. Tim, so happy to have you here talking with me today, and thanks for being our speaker in August. And how are you doing today?
Oh, thanks, Ben. I appreciate the invite and yeah, doing good.
Let's start off from the beginning. So tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up.
Yeah. Originally from Southern California, grew up in Orange County, born just down the road from Anaheim, Disneyland, and yeah, lived my early years there. Went to high school and undergrad in Flagstaff, Arizona. I consider Arizona kind of home now, but I've been in Denver in the Colorado area for a while now. First moved here for my master's degree at Colorado School of Mines finished that in 2006. I spent a number of years after that working overseas and in the Central African Copper Belt. I came
Oh,
back and then started a PhD in 2015. Finished that right when COVID hit and kind of been bouncing around between consulting and full-time jobs ever since.
okay, cool. So what got you into geology in the first place? Like, did you go into undergrad kind of knowing what you wanted to do? What was your kind of path to geo?
Yeah, yeah. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I tell people I still don't really know what I want to do. Um, but I had a really great chemistry teacher in high school who was just really inspiring. I didn't even know this at the time. It turns out she was a hydrologist. But yeah, totally didn't even know that. Yeah, I went to undergrad kind of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, liking chemistry and having a chemistry scholarship. So I said, okay, I'll major in chemistry. And then, I was in my junior year and I was looking out the window at all the people walking by, and it was nice and spring in Flagstaff. And I was like, I want to be out there, not in this lab. And that influenced me into changing to geochemistry. And then when I was doing geochemistry, all my colleagues were doing field camp, and I was like, I want to do field camp.
Yeah.
And one of my fellow students said, you should just get a dual major. Turned out she didn't even know how easy it was going to be. It was two more classes, and I got a dual major in geology and chemistry.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and that's kind of how I ended up in geology. And then, I decided I really wanted to do something very applied because I was at Northern Arizona University, and they're very scientific, really good research university, but I really wanted to be applied. And so I thought I'm going to do geological engineering for my master's, which gave me pretty limited choices. And again, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, but knowing I have these areas of interest. Like I was interested in environmental things and acid mine drainage. I was interested in mining. And I thought, I can kind of explore all these avenues if I go to School of Mines. And so I was really fortunate to get an opportunity to go there. And then that's where I met Murray Hitzman. And Murray I was actually going in a different direction. I was going and looking at studying Yellowstone. And then I went on a field trip with Murray to Cashin Mine, actually. And he said, this would make a great thesis for someone. And I kind of said, okay, sign me up. And that's how I ended up in sandstone hosted copper deposits.
Oh, okay, cool. So you've got, I think you mentioned there was a gap of what, about 9 years between your undergrad and then starting your PhD program. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, so undergrad, I finished in 2002, and I went straight to a
oh,
master's.
okay.
I
All
did
right, so
work a little
master's.
bit in between, but I went on to a master's, and then the master's was '06. I finished. I actually worked I was consulting in uranium exploration. It's a big boom time there, end of 2006, and then I actually took a job with Encana oil and gas and worked in the Paradox Basin for them for about a year. Um,
Cool.
yeah, and then after that is when I actually did the switch and went over to set hosted copper and went to Africa.
So were you doing uranium exploration in Utah as well, or was that?
That was in eastern Utah, western Colorado, and then a little bit in Wyoming as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So how did you find the transition between mining and then oil and gas? Because sometimes I've heard people that have tried to kind of transition from oil and gas to mining, and it's like, like it
Yeah.
seems like that door kind of closes, or maybe some of these disciplines are maybe a little bit more territorial. Is that true? Was that your experience, or was that how was it difficult, or was it?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I really wanted to be in minerals. So that was my goal. I knew the realities of like, okay, if I go this route, I'm going to make a little less money, but I'll be out in the field more. And that's kind of,
Yeah.
I chose like, let's do this. And then, when I was looking for work, I was approached by some folks at Encana and said, "Hey, would you be interested in interviewing?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." And they were very professional and had an agreement to me the next day, and it was considerably more than what I had been offered working in minerals. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot and see what happens. And I came in with like a bunch of other people who just finished their master's degree, and I felt like one of the team, and it really helped that I was working in the basin that I had done my master's on. So I was kind
Yeah.
of familiar in that way, but it certainly was a steep learning curve,
Yeah.
completely different. And I would say, yeah, it's so different. And there's crossover, but it's so different how we approach things.
Sure, I can imagine. What was it? What was this is probably a selfish question, but what was in Canada working on in the Paradox Basin? What were you
I was working on developing Hamilton Creek Field.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we were just, it had been, I guess they'd had some really big success the year before I joined, and we were just drilling out some more locations there.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Okay. And so was it how was it uh that you decided to transition to PhD? Was it
Yeah.
kind of market based or?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting story too. I actually left. I was in the DRC for 4.5 years, working 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So
Oh,
technically, I didn't live there, but I spent most of my time there.
yeah.
And I just kind of had reached my point of okay, I'm ready to kind of go back to being in the U.S. again. Came back and actually took a little bit of time off, and was approached by Murray Hitzman, my master's advisor again, and he said, "Hey, I've got this project. It's fully funded, and you really should do a PhD." And my initial reaction was like, "I don't know. Let me go see if I can find a good job." And this was 2015 time, and I was looking around, and there really wasn't a lot. And so I kind of thought, you know what an opportunity! Like what good fortune I have to have this opportunity. I'm gonna take it, you know. And then, probably about 2 years into my PhD, I thought, man, are you really committed enough to see this thing through?
Sure. I can
But,
imagine.
that's a little warning for other people who might have the same sort of opportunity. But I'm glad I did it, especially now being in the consulting world. It's very helpful to me.
Yeah, great. Um, so you mentioned Murray Hintzman. The and I typically ask this about mentorship, and at my stage, and maybe we're in similar stages of our career, we're becoming more mentors than mentees. What do you think makes a great mentor based on your past experience, or what kind of advice might you have for folks that kind of get into that more advisory role and how to be a better mentor? What
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't think there's any big overarching theme. I think listen to the people you're trying to mentor, right? And meet them where they're at. Everybody has different needs and they have different vision for their life. And I really try to understand what they're looking for, to give them guidance on where they see themselves going, right? I think it would be a mistake to kind of say this is the best way to do it, right? I think there's a way for everybody to kind of be involved in all kinds of different avenues. So
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Like, yeah, I think back in my career, like the people that have been the most positive in my background. I agree, like good listening and yeah, and that's something that I try and remind myself to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I
cool.
guess the other thing I would say just that stands out to me about like someone like Murray is just his support, like for anything that you're doing, that you're endeavoring in, he's there. He's supportive. Just kind of as I was just saying, like he meets you where you are and he's like, I think this is a good choice. Let's do this, support you and try to help you, encourage you where you want to go.
Yeah,
So even when I took a short break in between the oil and gas job and going out to Congo, and he was like, "That's great, yeah, do what you want to do."
yeah,
So yeah,
very cool. Um, so, and you've mentioned working for operators companies, and then now you're on your own. What kind of advice or how is like, how is it going? Like, because I know it's probably I don't know. I've done a little bit of it and talked to friends that have, and it's kind of like feels like it's always a hustle. Is that kind of your experience? Like, how do you like being an independent consultant versus working for a company? Like, what can you kind of tell us about?
yeah. I mean, I guess I'll take on the question about is it a hustle first. I just feel so fortunate. I've been really, really fortunate in my career to know people like Murray and have a really excellent network. And I would say almost all my work comes from people who either know me or direct work to me because they get approached. And so that's been amazing. Just so grateful to have those people in my circle. And then I
Yeah,
would also say, I have a pretty unique niche, right? And there's not a lot of people who are doing sediment hosted copper in the world. And I've been really fortunate to see the Central African Copper Belt, which is, one of the best, probably the best in the world, easily said to be the best in the world. Um, and getting a sense of what really amazing deposits look like, I think it really helps when you try to go out and evaluate people's work and or their work, their projects, and help guide them in what they're doing. But I think as a consultant, well, at least for me, I never am 100% confident. It's like I'm going to do the best I can,
yeah,
and hopefully they find value in what I'm providing. You know, um, and yeah, still figuring it out, still making my way. Each visit's a new challenge, a new opportunity. I would love to say I've got like a template like I just put my reports into, but I feel like I write a new one every time, which it's yeah, still I'm definitely still in the learning phase when it comes to consulting.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, and you kind of mentioned about maybe, and the way that I heard it is that like like your network is important and it's helped guide your career, and so great reminder for everybody, keep your network healthy and come to meetings like the RMS SAPM luncheon and others in the area and keep the network going. But also, I mean, you mentioned kind of um, confidence. Do you have anyone to bounce ideas off of if you're kind of stuck on something? How do you kind of handle that? What's your
Yeah.
as an independent consultant?
Yeah, I do reach out to my network. I reach out to people I know. I'm more of a geochemistry focused person. I'm really comfortable playing with people's geochemistry, trying to find insights there. But when it comes to things like, say, structural geology, I mean, I worked on a really structurally complex PhD, but it's still not my wheelhouse. And so I'll reach out to other people like, hey, what do you think? And even to the point of like saying, hey, can you come help me out and see how we can advance this together? Things
Yeah,
like that. And then, if the opportunity is there, confidentiality is sometimes an issue, but I'll reach out to people like Murray and say, "Hey, Murray, this is what I'm thinking about what I've seen. What are your thoughts?" And
yeah.
that's really helpful as well.
Good, good. Maybe let's change it up a little bit. So what keeps you fascinated about geology? What's like when you think about like, I don't know. Like, yeah, what keeps you going?
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's hard not to just say the cliche like I love rocks.
That's okay.
I
Yeah.
do. I really like
Yeah.
rocks, and
Yeah.
I think. I'm fascinated by the questions, right? Like, you get into a project and you get the surface level knowledge, and you're like, okay, this makes sense, right? And then you go actually see it for yourself. You're like, oh, okay, this doesn't work exactly the way that, it's written up, and those things where there's question marks, I think those are the opportunities, right? Of like, okay, what have people not thought about, or how's a different way I can interpret this? And yeah, I think I'm definitely a person who's driven to like find an answer, which
Mhm.
in geology can be really challenging. But I think
Yeah, right.
it
Yeah,
really drives me to push on. Like, okay, let's try to sort this out. Let's try to get a good explanation for what we're seeing here that allows us to kind of generate new targets and go test these ideas. And so, yeah, I think some of it's just inherent, I'm just the kind of person who I really want the answer. I want to know. And yeah, thirst for knowledge and yeah, just enjoy the geology questions that come to me.
great. Good answer. So what about, so it seems like travel's been kind of a regular part of your career and your life. Like what do you have a favorite place you've ever been?
Yeah, I would say Bolivia. Um, I think it was
Interesting.
one of those kind of surprises, where there's no expectation, and it really blew me away. Just the scenic beauty. It was just really a beautiful place. I went there to go see Uni Playa, the big salt flat,
Okay.
just because I was like, I want to see this. It sounds really neat. And I went there from Salar de Atacama in Chile and took a tour kind of over the border, over the Andes, and then up to the Salar. And along the way, you pass this series of lakes, and you're on the backside of the Andes, and it is just spectacular. I was just blown away. It was just so beautiful. And then I've been back to Bolivia also to look at some said copper occurrences. And yeah, it's a beautiful country and pretty kind of off people's radar. So I like that too. There's not a lot of tourists
Yeah.
going around. On my
Okay.
tour, I was one of four people. So
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. How fun. Cool. And do you have like a favorite uh rock, mineral, outcrop, fossil, something? What
If you ask me my favorite mineral, I don't really do favorites that much, but I love the color of dioptase. I always have. So I'd pick that one just for the color alone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. And then so what do you do in your free time when you're not thinking about said hosted copper?
Yeah, I've always been a runner. And so, yeah, I ran in my undergrad and yeah, just try to get out and run on the trails, especially. So I just run some trails a couple days a week if I can. And um, yeah, I used to play soccer a lot, but not so much anymore. But yeah, I just really enjoy being out in nature, going hiking, mountain biking, that sort of thing.
Yeah, right on. Do you do races? You do, or do you just run for fun?
Yeah, I definitely have done some races. I haven't run a race in a while, but yeah, I enjoy it. I wish I did it more actually. Get a kick out of
Yeah,
racing. So
good. Good. Okay, so your talk is coming up on Tuesday. What kind of, without spoiling it or giving it away, like what kind of teaser can you give our audience on what to expect from your talk?
yeah, I mean the goal for me is kind of just I'm not expecting a crowd that knows sediment hosted copper deposits, right? So I just want to give kind of the fundamentals of what is a sediment hosted copper deposit, how do they form, what are the pieces that we look for? Like when I'm exploring in a sedimentary basin, like what am I looking for to say, is this prospective? And then when I see a copper occurrence, how do I evaluate whether that's significant, that sort of thing. So it'll be a lot in the fundamentals of sediment-hosted copper deposits, and then I'll talk a little bit about the paradox basin. And I expect most people might be a little bit familiar with the paradox, and so we'll talk about the kind of the stratigraphy, and then where we find sediment-hosted copper deposits in the paradox basin, and how those formed, and then looking specifically at Cashin. And the neat story there is about the role of hydrocarbons in preparing what would normally be a really poor host rock and making it a decent host rock. Um, so
Oh, cool.
that's
Okay.
basically That's the story, and it's a good
Okay.
one. Yeah, it's one type of. There's two main types of sediment-hosted copper deposits, and those red bed type of what we find in the Paradox Basin. That's what I'll be talking about mostly during the talk.
Good. Good. Well, yeah, this is like you mentioned, it's going to be a little bit maybe outside of our knowledge base, but I think that's awesome because learning about new ways of thinking and new areas of the Paradox Basin that maybe we hadn't thought about before. I think that's going to be great.
Yeah,
So yeah, we'll look forward to next Tuesday, August 25th. So go to rmssepm.org. You can register if registration's still open. It's we're right on the edge, but we do accept walk-ins, and you can sign up to be with us in person or over Zoom. We have a hybrid option, but either way, you got to register. So head on over to rmssepm.org. But yeah, Tim, thanks so much for talking with me today. It was really fascinating getting to know you, and really thank you for being a RMSSPM luncheon speaker. And yeah,
yeah. Thank you, Ben, and looking forward to the talk.
awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks. Thank you.